Consult an advisor or conduct your own due diligence when making financial decisions. General principles discussed during this program do not constitute personal advice. This program is furnished by Dentist Advisors, a registered investment advisor. This is Dentist Money. Now, here's your host, Reese Harper.
Welcome to the Dentist Money Show, where we help dentists make smart financial decisions. I'm your host, Reese Harper, here with my trusty old co-host, Sir Ryan Isaac.
Back in the studio. Feeling it. It's the first day of spring today, actually. It's spring equinox. Is that what it's called?
I think so.
It's a warm day.
Feeling it?
Jenny has put together a nice spread here in the studio. Ryan is excited about being able to go outside again, and I'm sad because my skiing conditions are now slow.
They're deteriorating.
I went with my kids on Saturday, and
you did?
You know when your 4-year-old is like able to go down Black Diamond runs with you?
The snow's bad.
The conditions are a little slow.
Man.
But she's pretty stoked that she's...
Did she go?
That she's a Black Diamond runner now, you know?
I've never done that.
The blues are too slow.
It is funny, though, how when you live in a climate where there's 4 seasons, how we were just, like yesterday, we were at the gym. It was like 5:30, and we were working out outside. It was like 55 degrees, and it felt hot.
Yeah.
You know? And when you live in a place where there's 4 seasons, funny how in the spring 55 feels so good.
Yeah.
But like this October when it hits 55, it'd be like, this is freezing. It's the worst ever.
Yeah.
It feels amazing. So
you have to go through an adjustment. Well, speaking of exciting
news.
times with spring, lately we've been talking about the topic of how people consume news and how they think about good news versus bad news, how news affects people.
Yep.
And I was actually...
It affects me. I'm scared of a lot of things, I feel like, maybe unnaturally.
There are a few things you've been scared about. I've known
I've
you
added
for a
one
while.
to the list, though.
All right, give me the new one that I don't know about.
Well, I mean, it feels legitimate, okay? But I'm really worried about our planet.
Okay.
I'm really worried about our planet.
Well, that's not an irrational fear, though. That's an objective
I'm not going to
problem.
be around, but it's like part of my midlife crisis. I'm thinking, like, I can kind of imagine, like, my kids having kids one day, and they'll be like, they can't live in Southern California. It won't exist. Phoenix will be uninhabitable in 50 years.
Okay.
I mean, I'm making these up. Maybe that's not true, but I'm just saying.
I'm
worried about the future of our planet's health.
I think that's a more rational fear. I respect.
Okay.
I respect that fear slightly more than the fear you carry about being plowed over by a dump truck on a
car accident
on a crosswalk in Scottsdale.
Yeah, auto pedestrian accidents scare me. Earthquakes freak me out. We've had a string of
but
earthquakes
at a disproportionately high fear
yes,
ratio.
It's not. Being late for airplanes and inconveniencing strangers.
Yeah,
that's my list of things I'm
scared
of.
And I think these are so when we talk about bad news versus good news here, what we're talking about is that there's been a fair amount of research on this topic done. And I want to tell you about this in a little bit because you're going to find it very interesting. Pew Research Center has done a significant amount of research on consumption of news over the last 40 to 50 years and what type of news people are consuming. We're going to get to that in just a minute.
But
first, we want to talk about something that's been that's related to this topic, which is our favorite time of year, which is the Oscars.
Of course, the Oscars.
I love
Lady Gaga and Bradley
love
Cooper.
Film. I really do. And I think this was a good year. Jenny, do you think this was a good year or not? You thought it was an average year.
It was an average year for me. There was some good stuff.
What was your favorite film from this year?
The Favorite.
Yeah.
Did you see that one?
Yes.
It's so good.
Man, I'm behind. I
so
feel like I'm
good.
behind. But this is a good year for you, though, because this year was famous for a lot of the music in the movies, right?
I liked Green Book just because, for me, I connect with musicians, and this was, for those of you who haven't seen it, it's about a piano performance player that
I haven't seen
is African American, traveling in the Deep South during the
60s,
late 50s, early 60s, and what he experienced with his
It won Best Picture?
Brooklyn accent cabbie driver along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it got a lot. It got 7 nominations, I think.
So I gotta see it.
Anyway, I really
but good
liked
music
that
in that one.
Bohemian Rhapsody was excellent. Yeah. I liked it.
He's awesome.
He's so good. Do you know he has an identical twin brother?
He does?
Uh-huh. Identical.
Really?
There's two of
Amazing.
them.
I've never. Maybe it's his stunt double
Maybe.
because he has a stunt double. I wonder if that's his brother. I
He
didn't
does?
know. Yeah.
Man, this is Rami.
Rami Malek.
Malik.
Yeah.
I don't think his stunt double's his brother.
If you like him though, you got to see Mr. Robot. That's all I'm saying.
So good.
Okay.
I
But
thought he
anyway.
was way better in Bohemian Rhapsody than Mr. Robot.
Oh,
I felt
wow,
like
Mr.
Mr. Robot
Robot
was good, but it's just kind of like he had a one-tone kind of personality in that show.
He's disturbed kid.
I just felt like he really elevated his acting
Man,
career
I love
with this film.
Mr. Robot. I'm still going.
Anyway,
I got one
so the thing about the thing that's interesting about film and why this ties in. I wrote an article a few weeks ago about an Oscar winner did me and you see it or me and Justin?
I think
see
you
it?
and Justin saw it, and then I saw it later.
There was a film.
You were excited though.
If any of you have, I'm gonna paint a little bit of a picture for you here about a time in history. It's my birthday, actually, 1982. This is a
good year.
This is the time. It was 1982, and we're looking out into the future, and you can see. Imagine like really misty, dusty, dark.
But it's more like pollution, not mist.
pollution.
Yeah.
Just
Smog.
like covering streets. And imagine these
Like a
giant
hellscape.
billboards of fluorescent lights shining in the sky, and you can kind of see them in the distance through this like
Kind of
pollution.
eerie through the smog. Yeah.
And there's all these poor people running around in the streets, like selling scraps of metal and little loaves of bread, and this
is Phoenix in July, actually.
Yeah.
This is exactly what it's like in Arizona in July.
and it's 1982, and you're looking out into the future, okay, and you're looking towards 2019, okay, because that is the
That's the setting for this.
yeah, that's the setting for this film. It is 1982, but this picture I'm painting is happening in 2019, and
That's so funny.
and this was a movie. It was a Ridley Scott movie called Blade Runner. If you've ever seen the original,
You know, it's crazy. I never saw the original.
it's a lot more
Apocalyptic.
yeah,
cool,
than the more recent one, which me and Justin.
I never saw that show.
Anyway, the bottom line is, if you think about the way things are in 2019, compared to the way that Ridley Scott painted
Thought
them
they would be.
at that time,
Because it's set where? What? It's Los Angeles?
yeah, it's in L.A.
Yeah.
and where the Oscars take place,
Crazy.
right? And at the time, I mean, there was giant like monolithic kind of skyscrapers,
Yeah.
a lot of pollution. It was just like really dark. And if you think about it, I mean, it was believable at the time, right? 1982. I mean, it's been
Yeah, they're
a
like
long
decades
time.
from now in Los Angeles when everything's been
It's been 40
destroyed
years, you know?
and, yeah,
Yeah.
built up and destroyed again.
And life didn't shake out quite that way.
No,
You
there's a
know?
little smog in LA, but it's
Objectively,
nicer
like the air pollution's better today than it was then. I know in Salt Lake, the air pollution today is better than it was in
Back then.
1982.
than that. More regulation,
There's just better emission
better
standards.
technology, better standards.
There's more. It's not like it's marginally better because population's like way bigger.
Yeah.
But the fact that there's even any objective improvement
Yeah.
is a good sign.
Yeah, but in 1982, when he made that film, he's like, "Oh, by 2019," he's like, they just kind of picked a number out of the air.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what seems far away but believable? 2019.
Yeah.
That's so far away.
Yeah. I just thought it was a cool
I'm sure the
coincidence.
world will be over by then.
Yeah, it's a cool coincidence to see, and it paints the story of the bad news versus good news research that me and Ryan have been looking into lately.
Yeah, it's just fun. It's more compelling to look at. It catches your attention.
Yeah, I think we should probably. I'm going to tell you a little bit about I'm going to tell you a little bit about the research that has been done, and I want to go into some news that has that's been measured. If you look at Pew's research, you can find this there's a few different websites that you could find it at. But if you go to pewresearch.org, you can read on news preferences. Okay, there's a few articles. They probably are going to come out with another one recently that's going to examine the last 10 years because they're on about a 10-year cadence on how they look at this. But if you look across the 19 like general news categories by decade,
Oh, okay.
and you try to examine what is the highest watched news category that is pretty much led the pack the entire time.
I wish I didn't already know this because it would be fun to guess.
Yeah. Jenny probably doesn't know. Do you know?
I don't know.
What's the
Okay.
what would you guess is the most to get? Yeah. What
would you guess in let's say
most attention
is
in news?
the highest attention kind of news story, like type of news?
I mean, it's always like bad news. It's your shootings. It's your like car crashes.
Would you say crime?
I mean,
What
I
would you
worked in
think?
news for 2 years,
Okay,
so
okay.
that was. I mean,
So I'm gonna give you a couple of options to pick
Yeah.
from, and you tell me which one you think
okay,
is the highest.
let's do it.
Play along at home, will you?
Okay. It can be crime and social violence, health and safety,
No.
natural disasters,
Yes, big time.
war and terrorism, or bad weather. Which one do you think would be the highest?
What was the third one again?
Third one I said was natural disasters.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
go with crime.
Crime.
Crime. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would have thought the same thing. Crime is highly ranked, but of these ones I gave you, crime's the lowest.
Seriously?
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
But it's still very high. But the crime represents in this particular scoring it was about it's almost half as engaging as the highest option, which is war and terrorism. So
Which I can
war
see.
and terrorism by far dominates.
But what's crazy,
News
and
cycles.
that's been a consistent thing since they started tracking this for like
Yeah.
3 decades.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show like the world we live in.
Yeah.
That war and terrorism is there's always so much of it
Yeah.
that it's always the most popular thing.
Tied for second place, all right? Tied for second place is money.
Huh.
Money news, and predominantly money news related to
Like markets
the
crashing,
national
okay.
economy and stock markets, okay,
No, tied for 2.
is a very highly watched issue.
Yeah.
Be surprising, but it's tied with that is any bad weather globally.
Oh,
Yeah.
They love to go crazy about bad
Yeah.
weather. It's
Bad
like
weather.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
6 hours of hurricane
That's true.
coverage.
I mean, you don't want to downplay like even just this last winter. But it was a crazy winter across
Yeah.
the country. A lot of huge. But
Totally.
they name them like the Hellfire Bomb Cyclone. You
Yeah.
know, like the craziest names that
Yeah.
really don't seem that they're that bad.
Or
Well,
like
so almost so basically of all the stories published, it's close to half of any of the when the public tune in, almost half of the public when they tune in and watch a news story closely, which is measured by just quantity of viewership, half of the stories almost are linked to war and terrorism.
Interesting.
And so when people get engaged, that's the highest engagement level of any story. Sports is actually a lot lower. Sports is about 30% of the impact that war and terrorism has. So it's about
Really?
a third of
And
the
less than money,
engagement level.
less than bad weather.
Way less than money. Way less than bad weather.
Crazy.
Way less than natural
I wouldn't have thought
disasters.
that. I wouldn't have thought that. At all.
Anything regarding health and safety is also ranks very high. Campaigns and elections are half as popular as war and terrorism, bad weather, money,
Really?
natural disaster. Yeah, you wouldn't assume that, but
Unless
things
they're all
like
linked.
things like that have the chance at being good news, like science and technology, any kind of like celebrity scandals, personalities.
So I read the
entertainment.
celebrity news is actually like the lowest category.
Yeah, it like
But
in
that's
terms
surprising.
of when people tune in and watch closely. Like celebrity news has a static, like consistent viewer base.
Yeah.
That don't pay attention to anything else.
It's just celebrity news.
That's what they do. And I like some people like me, like I tune into like I feel like I read a fair amount of news, but I don't watch news on TV as
Yeah.
often because I know that it's just war and terrorism, crime, natural disaster,
and a little bit of
and a
celebrity
little bit of
news.
money, and then some health and safety, and and then some foreign
And
wars.
what's crazy is it's curated for like the consumer's preferences.
That's the thing that
Right?
is kind of important here. Is this is not happening because the news is publishing stories that they want to publish that are the most interesting to them.
Or there's not like an algorithm or someone saying this is actually the most impactful thing that you should know in the world today.
Yeah, like if
It's just like, this is what you want.
If
So just
science and
give the
technology
people what you want.
and innovation and good news around innovation, science, and technology was interesting to people and they were tuning in, they would do more of it. But they don't because no one watches it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, global warming's we have a measurable improvement this year in temperature in the Atlantic Ocean, and no one tunes in.
Yeah,
and no one cares.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, like I published an article. What my worst performing article of the entire year this year was entitled "A Big Dose of Good News for a Change." No one clicked on it because no one cares.
So if you just switch that title around,
if I put like,
here's the worst news you'll read all
the
week.
market is gonna implode.
Oh yeah, clickbait.
I would have everyone would be like reading it and commenting and so excited.
Yeah.
But I wrote about a lot of good news that happened.
You don't understand the way social media works. You got to fix that title.
So I want to tell you about some good news that happened this year.
Yeah,
to combat some of the tendencies that we have.
Cool stuff.
The first one that I think is one that I want Sir Ryan Isaac to tell us about the first good news story.
Well, this was really cool. I didn't know about some of this stuff. So there was it was a New York Times article.
Yeah.
A story called "Why 2018 is the Best Year in Human History."
Yep.
I bet no one read that.
No one read it.
If it said the worst year, everyone would read that. Because I want to know, like, was this the worst? I agree. I think it was the worst.
So
I want to confirm my bias.
Before we get into these, I just want to wrap up with a little bow here on the bad news. The reason Pew Research studies show, right, that the reason people are tuning into bad news has to do with our human psychology. Like, Ryan doesn't want to get run over by a truck in Scottsdale when he walks across the street. Yeah. That's his worry.
Or be late for an airplane.
Ryan's not thinking about, rationally about, the probability of that, or whether he should be more concerned about what he ate for lunch, or whether he should be more concerned about the fact that he's, about to lose a client because he didn't call him back for 3 days because he was just freaking out about the crosswalk on the street.
Yeah.
That was not,
I was consumed by that.
He was all consumed
That's all I could think about.
Now, he was more concerned about surviving.
Yes.
Because you don't want to die.
Yeah.
List the things that are kind of like your main fears, and you'll see that, this is common for all of us.
That's the news we consume?
Well, it's the things we worry about tend to be related to some kind of survival, of our financial survival, our health survival. I mean, people tune into the flu shot news story a lot. At the end of the year, that's a big one.
The flu, yeah.
Yeah, it's and those flu. The flu posters that the grocery stores and pharmacies put in the corner of the window, that attract people to.
Flu shot's here.
It's time. This year's flu shot is here. And then, you get to read about all the types of
flu shot stats.
Anyway, that we tune in to things because we're trying to survive. Humans are trying to not die, and they're trying to not run out of money, and they're trying to not get sick, and they don't want to get killed. They don't want to get in fights. Yeah. They don't want to have conflict with other humans. They don't. Yeah. So, your example of not inconveniencing strangers.
I hate inconveniencing strangers.
I'm not trying to. That is not an uncommon thing. People don't like to inconvenience people or create conflict. Yeah. Why? It is closely linked to our survival. War and terrorism and inconveniencing strangers in public are not that unrelated.
Well, it probably comes from my caveman ancestors. Somewhere millions of years ago, one caveman inconvenienced another, bumped him with his club, and then the other one clubbed him to death.
Yeah.
And so it's just in my brain, be careful out there.
Yeah, I'm just saying these are genetic traits that we have, and we try to survive more than we do anything else.
So we're also just consequently then more interested in seeking out those news stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
They'll
catch our attention.
Those are the things that we pay attention to because we are wired to survive.
I'm scared of earthquakes, and in the last couple months there were a couple small quakes in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Irregularly, a lot of them.
Yeah.
I read so many earthquake articles
the
last month. Tons.
Yeah, and I just
want to know.
That's a normal thing.
Just want to know.
And I think and it's really critical to just be able to acknowledge that, and
that's what's happening.
The more time passes, and the more you can kind of be aware that this is happening, the more you can kind of be more balanced in your emotional intake throughout the day, because you can kind of be able to realize that your body, your mind, you're compensating for some of this bad news in a disproportionately aggressive way to protect yourself from dying, getting sick, getting
and also
hurt, running out of money.
It's in the news, not necessarily just because it's actual news or that you really need to know about it, but it's in the news because they got to make money too.
Yeah.
And they know there's lots of people like me
I'm
reading
just- yeah,
about
dude.
the scary stuff.
Like, if all news could just be averaged together, all things that occurred in the world averaged together and put up on a screen in front of you and ranked by category, that would be like real news. So, like, you know, there were 1,400 of these things happen.
Yeah, okay.
800 of that happened.
Categorically ranked.
You know, like, of things, just events,
Yeah.
like death, life, birth, goods, bads. That would, like, if there were a way to aggregate the real events in the world that were happening, it would look so different from what we call news. What we call news is marketing
Yes.
to
Big time.
our fears. And it's not because they're trying to be bad. It's just like they're in business to, like, get viewers, and they're not going to put stuff in front of you that you don't want to see.
Yeah.
And humans generally don't want to see good news.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Well, it's funny. So I read
like, these say we do. I know people
we
say
we
they
do, but
do.
we don't.
I want good news. Like, we
We
all
don't.
love good news, but, like, you don't tune into it the same on average.
Yeah,
you know?
I was just reading this morning an article about a city. It was like a city online newspaper in another country in Europe. Big viewership, but they tried for one day. They said, we're only going to put positive stories on our website today, and we're just going to track all the clicks and how long people stay on the site. They lost 2/3 of their clicks and visitors that day.
It's
That
like-
day, they lost 2/3 of the people that normally clicked and sat, and
Yeah.
because it was all like puppies and like good weather and like new advancements in science and technology and happy people stories.
Yeah.
And they lost 2/3 of their
Yeah.
viewership.
Even the more you want to know what news should be, like, if you aggregated this thing in this big screen like I was talking about, most of it would just be like uninteresting average lives.
Yeah,
It would be like, okay, like, that's not interesting,
But
good,
it happened a lot
or
so it
bad.
got aggregated.
But, like, most people's days are just kind of like, meh,
Yeah.
meh. Most
That's what Jenny's
governments,
cat sounds
most
like.
governments
Right.
are just kind of
That's
like, eh.
Yeah.
Like,
Whatever.
most national countries' war situation is kind of like, meh.
Yeah.
I mean, not to downplay the actual small amount of war that's happening right now, but for on aggregate, like, it's kind of like pretty safe relative to what it was like in
Everything's pretty boring.
1942 when the whole world was bombing each other.
Yeah.
Like, meh, you know?
Yeah.
Like, in terms of the world, like, getting worse, it actually is. It's hard to know if that's actually happening until you look at all news. And unfortunately, we don't have access to all news. Like, we don't know
Yeah.
what's
I think you
actually
said it,
happening.
man,
Like,
marketing. I think you said that really
just
well.
marketing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some good stories that I think are kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I also have a question, so you can tell me if you want to like hit this before these good news stories or after. My question was how it relates to financial news.
Yeah.
And we get articles and links sent, forwarded, texts like all the time.
Yeah.
Every week there's probably 3 or 4 that someone's like, "Did you see this? What do you think about this?" You know,
Yeah.
like people forward newsletters and articles and blog posts. Do you get that a lot?
Oh, yeah.
So I'd be curious to know like how this ties in with like the common financial bad news themes that you see.
Yeah.
You know, and like why do you think those are always, why do they persist so much?
Well, I just saw one good post on a Facebook group yesterday that was like, S&P's up 20% since Christmas or 15% since Christmas or
No
something.
comments?
And like there was like 17 comments, and they're all
Oh.
like, "Well, that's not going to last long. Well, that's going to go away." Like, well,
Yeah.
that's just fake money. That's funny money.
Yeah.
You know, like, it was just like, there was no like
Cool.
happy or
Yeah.
like, yeah, it was good. I'm glad I like didn't like bail, or
Yeah.
I'm glad I have kept investing consistently since then. Just like, well,
This is what companies do as they grow over time. Hooray.
Yeah.
No one said that.
everyone was just kind of like, nah,
That's fake.
crooked wolves on Wall Street. You know, we're just worried about the 1 or 2 negative stories, even in a relatively positive decade. Like, we have not spent time talking about the good financial stuff
Yeah.
that's happened in the last 10 years.
Yep.
Now, there have been some good things that have happened. You know, the federal government's balance sheet is relative to the size of our, you know, total net worth and our the government's asset base, like we're making modest improvements. It's not good enough, and it's not exciting, but like we don't hear anything about anything positive, even in a bull market for the last 10 years.
You said it. I mean, even when markets go up, the consensus is like, yeah, but they're coming down. Yeah, but they're going to crash hard.
Anyway, I don't want to be like a Pollyanna person about all the news in the world, but I'm just saying you're right now getting disproportionately bombarded with bad news, and you like it because you're trying to survive.
Yeah, your brain's
You just want to like be alive.
You just want to be alive, man.
So tell the story of this New York Times article.
Back to
the
New York
2018 Best Year in Human History article. Tell me what
the first thing it reported was that 300,000 people around the world gained access to electricity for the first time ever. I mean, have you ever
sink in?
Well, yeah, I mean,
let that sink in.
Sometimes, in the first world problems, when you purposely go to a cabin without electricity and you're like, this is awesome.
I'm living organic.
I'm organically living right now, which is always true because we're organic.
Yeah, that's true.
But you go 2 days without that. It's hard to imagine. What would that be like to get electricity for the first time ever in your whole life?
Yeah.
What would be the best thing about that, do you think? Refrigerated foods, probably?
Well, being able to see
at night without fire.
Yeah, like not have to breathe in coal.
Yeah.
And
think about that. Being able to see at night and storing food.
Yeah. Well, being able to find my iPhone when its battery was dead. Because I didn't have a light. Oh, wait.
Because you could use the flashlight from your other one. Okay, so that was, let's see.
You couldn't plug your iPhone in anyway.
What?
You couldn't plug your iPhone in anyway.
That's true. Yeah, you have no iPhone. Right. Doesn't even matter.
I couldn't do that. I like the water story that I heard last year. So last year, 305,000 people got access to clean drinking water for the first time.
But it was like every day, wasn't it?
Every day.
Every day, another 305,000 people got access to clean drinking water.
Exactly.
So think of just in 2018, there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people around the world that got clean water to drink. They could see at nighttime, and they could store some food somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty impressive, and most of that came from societal innovation and advancements in technology and some service from people, and that's pretty impressive. Another thing that's kind of interesting is
it's like double.
620,000 people got online for the first time each day in 2018. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. Twice the amount of people who got access
Millions
to clean
of people
drinking water.
Yeah. Millions of people in 2018 finally got on the internet. It's crazy. You know?
I wonder what they did. What was the first thing they did?
Downloaded Instagram.
I mean, it's almost 200. It was like, I was doing the math, and it was like 200 million people.
Oh my
gosh. It's like almost, it's 2/3 of the population of the United States somewhere around the world. Got online.
And went straight to Facebook or Instagram?
Probably one of the Kardashians' Instagram accounts.
No, they went.
They looked up bad news.
They went to find, they're like, is there any war and terrorism going on?
They went to CNN and Fox, and they're like, what are the worst stories on these sites right now?
Yes. Here's another one that I thought was probably the most impactful from last year. The child worldwide death rate is falling significantly. It was 4% last year. 4%, which is still too many. But in 50 years ago, if you look at like 1960, let's just go back to 2003. Let's go more recent. So if you go back to 2003, the child death rate globally was 7%. We've almost cut it in half.
Due to, is there like a prevailing reason?
Well, there's like 17 different reasons it happens. And it's most of it's just the sanitary conditions at
nutrition,
childbirth, and a lot of illnesses are primarily the key factor. I mean, malaria is a part of it, but that's not the biggest one. So anyway, that's a big deal though.
It chopped in half since
cutting. Yeah, and it's 12, 14 years, right? I want you to share the statistic about life expectancy. Back, if you look like in 1960, life expectancy was 52 globally. Like people lived to age 52, and now as of this year, we're at 72 globally. on average.
That's a really fascinating impact, though, if you think about money and retirement and savings, and not just that, but like careers too.
Yeah.
You know, the longer we live, the longer we have health and mental capacity, and we don't want to sit around, or we're not going to die early.
Yeah.
It changes a lot of things.
Tons. You probably have a fear though of running out of food if you think of people leaving longer. I imagine a part of you wonders if we're going to run out of food.
More humans on the planet, huh? Cool. Yeah, I'm sure we'll be able to sustain that one.
You're not going to be able to get the quantity of tasty food that you want.
I know, like, yeah, what'll happen to donuts and tacos?
But if you felt that way, you might actually be wrong.
I know. Well, that's what was surprising is you think that we're running out of resources.
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to feed all these people that are living longer?
Yeah.
Maybe there was a reason.
Well, and this was something that I was kind of like not sure about myself until doing the research, because I was like, are we really running out of resources? Because I found studies that they hypothesize that we're going to run out of resources at our current pace, given population growth.
I know, but then you hear things like we throw away insane amounts of food every day, like enough to feed the whole world over many times, you know.
Yeah, and
that we like discard. Like,
yeah, and
my mashed potatoes getting a little cold, and I ate 7 ounces of steak.
There's a resource index called the Simon Abundance Index, and it basically measures like it measures the price of different agricultural and forestry resources and energy resources to try to like measure whether stuff's costing more or costing less, and between like 1980 and now, I mean, almost every year it's decreased by about, it's several percentage points. I think it's been 40% lower today than it was
the cost
in 1980 of just a unit of anything on average. If you take a unit of any commodity, energy commodity, a forestry commodity, a food commodity, like we are producing more stuff. Like in Idaho right now, in 1 acre, I mean, they're producing, 4 or 5 times the volume of potatoes in 1 acre that they were producing
when you were farming
20 years ago. So there's a lot of things we need to do to make improvements to our natural resources and our food consumption. And I was reading. I have a couple of close friends that are vegan, and I go to eat with them at this vegan restaurant.
And they tell
downtown
you the whole time
that like I love like vegan food, and if I could honestly, like I would love to try to be vegan. It's really hard when you like grew up eating meat. And you want to know what the most motivating factor to me would be is like how much more resources it takes to feed the world using meat than it does using vegetables.
Oh, really?
Like, and if everyone just cut their meat consumption by like 5%, or like by 4%, or we ate a more efficient meat, like cattle is like one of the most inefficient meats to eat. Like it costs a lot to raise a cow and feed a cow and get cows ready to eat.
I'm just trying to picture what Ron Swanson would be.
But
looking
like
at,
turkey,
to this.
or like
I like me some turkey,
chicken, birds, like
birds.
Even if everyone was like, I'm gonna prefer to eat chicken over beef, like I'm gonna do this a certain number of times each year.
Yeah.
And and we replaced that.
I feel like I'm doing my part then. I like that.
It's crazy, man.
I eat a lot of chicken.
Like that whole math blew my mind. Like
really?
The economics of food consumption globally. I was like, geez, like if all of us made like just a little bit different choice, you don't have to like not consume meat.
Yeah.
But like the ratio at which you consume certain types of meat totally affects global food consumption, like in a massive way.
Interesting.
And so, it just made me kind of realize like when I'm looking at all this good news, I was like, great, we're like producing more stuff, we're getting more efficient. And on top of that, if everyone can continue to improve their behaviors with energy consumption, improve your behavior with the type of carpooling you do, improve your behavior with the type of food you eat, how frequent you eat it, like how much vegetables you introduce into your life instead of, how much meat you introduce.
Yeah.
Balancing like all those different things together, I mean, we can really have a massive change in the overall, health of our life and planet. And I'm like,
that's crazy.
It's all this stuff really does matter.
I'm still kind of stuck back at the like eat less red meat thing though.
So I know. It's okay, dude. I'll let you live there.
I don't eat a lot of red meat. but I like it.
Yeah, me too. That's the
Shout
hard
out to
part.
it.
I wouldn't. My friends couldn't quite get me to give
Switch
it up,
over?
but they were motivating me to like conserve. I was like, I never thought about it that way.
The most efficient meat.
Yeah, he was like, look at how much dollars it costs to produce a pound of turkey versus a pound of beef. Like, it's like 7 times the cost or something like that.
Well, it kind of makes sense. I mean, I'm just guessing, but it seems like like a bird's so much smaller. You can have more of them in one place. It's easier to feed and contain and control.
Yeah.
Right? And
I mean,
store.
I mean, I don't know yet how I feel about this. I'm on the verging open end. I'm sure I'm going to get like plastered about
1 year from now, it'll be like a vegan episode, and you'll be like telling your story of how you turned vegan.
Yeah, I'm just like, I was not expecting to be persuaded. This is like not something that.
Okay.
But like when you tell me that other people around the world can eat more food because I'm just going to change my diet preferences slightly.
You go to Chick-fil-A instead of McDonald's.
I'm like, ooh.
Eat more
Well, I'm
chicken.
not sure anymore which one's beef and which one's chicken. I mean, it's starting to get a
little questionable.
Anyway,
That's fine.
But anyway, I liked those stories. So
Okay.
I think I want to just wrap up by talking really briefly about how this correlates to the financial side.
I was going to ask about that.
And we went back and we'll post an article on this. If you want, again, the article to reference to see these links is A Big Dose of Good News for a Change. And Jenny's going to email that out on our email newsletter when we get the podcast episode coming out.
This is an article on our website, DennisAdvisors.com.
Yep. You can go to DennisAdvisors.com/education and look for the article A Big Dose of Good News for a Change to see some of these links. But what we did was I went back and tried to find some articles that I felt like were kind of negative news, which is typical of the financial news. And I would try to figure out I tried to do some testing with people to see if they knew what year a headline was from, right? I wanted to find out if I give you a headline.
What year are we
Do
talking
you know? Because they're fairly specific issues.
Yeah.
That they're talking about, and I wanted to just see what that feels like. So I'm going to play that game with our audience right now, and I'm going to list a headline.
Okay.
And I want you to think about if you think that's a headline from today, or if you think it's a headline from a long time ago. Okay. First headline is this. It's the Time Magazine headline cover of Time Magazine. All right. And it looks like this. It says, "Is capitalism working?" All right. Is capitalism working?
What year?
What year do you think that was from? Right. And
well, what's funny about that in 2019, we're going through, we're coming up on a pretty emotional election cycle.
yeah.
And there's some really polarizing views about capitalism and socialism and how we should structure future governments to really take over people. So you could easily be like, oh, that's 2019. That's February 2019.
But anyway, this was actually this article headline was from 1980.
Oh, that's my birth year.
Mm-hmm.
What a great year.
Yeah, in the Time started this way when they opened up the article. It said, in an age of economic anxiety, there are real and rising concerns about whether free enterprise can surmount the problems of inflation, energy, and productivity in our economy. The relentless daily pounding. Anyway, they go on and you read that first paragraph and you're just like,
yeah,
this is 2019 maybe.
Yeah, it's February 2019. We're having
and
that
it's
discussion.
1980. Here's another one that I think is a really interesting one. Imagine this one is getting this one would have been really, really hard to know a few years ago.
Okay.
Bankers now the headline of the magazine article again is America's banks are awash in troubles, and it has a picture of a bank, and that bank is floating in the sea. And it's got all this money around it, and you're worried,
it's a wash.
It's America's banks awash in troubles.
What year? That's the question.
A lot of people that I gave this to felt like it was just it was like a few years ago in the recession.
Yeah.
Like that's when they would have said, probably not today, like 2019.
Yeah, you're not hearing
it would have been a few years ago.
For sure,
right?
yeah.
And this one was actually from 1984. All right.
Man.
1984. Bankers now face their most strenuous survival test since the Great Depression. How many times have you heard that about the Great Recession?
Oh, yeah.
Now this was an article from 1984, and that was the headline is, we are facing the most strenuous test since the Great Depression. Everyone uses the Great Depression as a reference point for how bad current policy or current issues are. And I think we'll be using that probably for the next 40 years. It's probably never going to be quite as bad as the Great Depression.
Let's hope not.
There's a lot of reasons.
1984, though. Banks awash in trouble, 1984. Yeah, you could say, I don't think most people would say in the last couple of years, but for sure everyone would point to like, anywhere between 07 and 2012.
Yeah. Like it would be really hard. And the article, first paragraph, I read you the first sentence, but it says, because of poor management, overzealous lending, and overzealous lending, commercial banks' profits have been battered.
Man.
This is the clearest example of the industry's chaos as we look at a growing string of financial failures.
Crazy.
It just feels very 08.
That's so 08.
09, 2010. Like, feels very Big Short. It feels very Big Short.
Such a good show.
You know?
Great book.
And so we can go on for quite a while on this. But I could give you article after article and headline after headline and magazine cover after magazine cover. You will not be, in most of these cases, you could interject these headlines in multiple years.
Yeah.
Sometimes in any one calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a big one called the crash. The biggest stock market crash in history was a day called Black Friday. It was in 1987. And it was like a mass. It was the biggest single one-day drop in the S&P in history.
Yeah.
And since that point in time, I mean, there's been a ton of articles written entitled like the crash or
Black Friday.
It's something significant like that. And I think that you could put that headline article like in any one calendar year at certain moments, and people wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that would have been December of this year for some people.
Yeah, well, I remember Christmas
time.
Eve, man. It's Christmas Eve. I remember thinking like, why are the markets open and why are they going down so much on Christmas Eve?
Yeah.
You know, this is not cool.
Totally.
It could have been the crash.
So what's the summary of this? Like you summarize and wrap this up.
Well, the way I think about this is like kind of going back to what I said earlier. Every week without fail, I get forwarded, and I mean some of these I love when people send these, so don't take this like stop sending me stuff, because some of them are really good and really insightful. But every week there's articles and blog posts and links that are forwarded. We're pulled into forum discussions. You know, we have our own group, dentistadvisors.com/group. There's all these other financial Facebook forums, and I guess my takeaway is that it's just so easy to get caught up in that. You know, it's so easy to just get caught up in the bad news or the negative and kind of just the hype of something negative, you know, that everything's just going to crash and tumble. And it's just like things just hardly ever actually work that way, you know. And so my takeaway is it's not easy because I still will click on earthquake articles, you know, and I'm clicking on a lot of global warming articles. So I'm scared of it now. So it's not easy, but just being aware of it, like you said earlier, if you're a little bit more aware of it, then maybe you can stop and slow down when you read an article and go, okay, what's the other side of this story? There is another side to this story that's not being told. What is it?
Yeah. And I like that. I would summarize in a similar way, maybe adding a little bit different flavor. And I would just say, you know, make sure that you don't act on bad news. Like, don't take an action based on bad news. Be really careful when you take in your news and information. Just be cautious about it and think and contemplate the news that you're taking in and decide if your action is being taken on. If you're taking action on bad news because it really does change the game for you. It changes the facts on the ground are now different for you. Like your life.
Right.
For some people, like if we had a bad enough stock market crisis, like one we'd never seen before, and you were in a situation where that significantly affected your immediate plans because you also had something happen with your practice or you also had something happen with your employment or you also had something happen with your family situation, your marriage, like that significantly changed like the facts about your case, then maybe some of this bad news is something you can act on, you know? But in the vast majority of cases, people are acting on bad news when the underlying fundamentals of their life would not change and shouldn't change. And so I would, we need to keep seeking out like ways to like fix our trade deficits as a country, like improve our federal deficit and not have budget overruns, try to have good, personal budgets and run our practices effectively. And, we've got to improve. We don't want to have another financial crisis. We don't want to have another banking disaster. And we don't want to have any looming like recessions over our head if we can help it.
But they're going to happen.
Yeah. We're going to work towards fixing those things. Let's work towards fixing them, but the good news, I think the real good news to me is that all of this like continuing innovation, the work that Ryan's doing every day, that your practice is doing every day, that the dental industry is doing every day, that banks are trying to do every day, all this like collective human brain power going to work, like it's making things marginally better all the time. Most people in the world are innovators that are like fixing things, and that ultimately is what the global stock market reflects. And that's the beauty of having an investment portfolio in something as diverse and as innovative as the stock market is.
Yeah, because you're capturing all of that human innovation and the motivation and the pressure to change and get better and get cheaper and make more money and have more profits. And
the promise that the market's making to you and your portfolio isn't that it's never going to have a recession or go through setbacks or make mistakes or have problems. But the promise is that all of our collective brain power is going to continue to work harder that next time around to improve things even better.
Yeah.
And that's why, since 1926, you're seeing the highest average annual return of any asset class in history. I mean, that you
literally hardly have to do anything with.
And it's just all that innovation that's coming through, and I just think it's important to remember that and stay
I think it's a cool
rational,
principle. Stay rational.
Stay rational about the news you're taking in.
All right.
So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We can end with this because I think this is an important thing too. As you hear information and news and stories from friends and family, it's important that you have an anchor back to your own reality and your own situation. That's what the elements that we created is for. That's why knowing what am I worth and how fast is my net worth growing and what do I actually save and what do I make and what do I spend and what are my debts, what are my interest rates. Having an anchor in just some solid organization, I think changes that a lot too, because you can hear bad news and be like, that feels really scary. It feels really impactful. And then go to your plan and go, oh, but I'm okay. I'm still headed in the right direction. So anyway, thanks for joining us. If you'd like to talk to one of our advisors, we have a great schedule that you can call them on, right? No, I wouldn't say wide open. It's not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but it's pretty good. You can call someone. You can call us at 833-DDS-PLAN. You can text that number, which is really cool. Or you can just go to our website and schedule an appointment at your own convenience on a lunchtime or after hours or maybe even a Saturday every once in a while. Go to dentistadvisors.com, click book free consultation, and schedule an appointment to talk with one of our financial advisors. Or go to our Facebook group, ask us some questions, join a poll, join a conversation, add some comments.
dentistadvisors.com/group.
Thanks for listening again.
Carry on. Thanks again for listening, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed the show.